In August of 2017, the world watched as a long-simmering crisis in Myanmar's Rakhine state exploded into a full-blown campaign of state-sponsored terror. The official narrative from Myanmar's military, known as the Tatmadaw, was that they were conducting clearance operations. They claimed these actions were a necessary and proportionate response to attacks on police outposts by a small militant group called the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, or ARSA. However, what unfolded was anything but a targeted counter-terrorism mission. Instead, it was a brutal, systematic, and widespread assault aimed not just at militants, but at the entire Rohingya civilian population. This was not a spontaneous outburst of violence. It was a meticulously planned operation designed to terrorize and expel an entire ethnic group from their ancestral lands. The military's justification for their actions quickly fell apart under international scrutiny. The scale and coordination of the violence were far too extensive to be a simple reaction to ARSA's attacks. Entire villages were surrounded, men were separated from their families and executed, women and girls were subjected to horrific sexual violence, and homes were burned to the ground. The operation was sweeping and indiscriminate, treating every Rohingya man, woman and child as a potential enemy. The Tatmadaw, along with local nationalist militias, moved through northern Rakhine state with a chilling efficiency, leaving a trail of death and destruction that was clearly intended to make the region uninhabitable for the Rohingya people. The term clearance operations was a sinister euphemism, a piece of state propaganda designed to mask the true nature of the military's objective, the permanent removal of the Rohingya. For decades, the Rohingya had been subjected to state-sponsored persecution, stripped of their citizenship, and portrayed as illegal immigrants from Bangladesh. The 2017 crackdown was the horrifying culmination of this long-term strategy of dehumanization. It was an attempt to solve the Rohingya problem once and for all through sheer force. The violence was not random. It was a policy executed with brutal precision, aimed at driving a terrified and broken population across the border, erasing their presence from the land they had called home for generations. The international community was slow to grasp the full extent of the horror, but the evidence soon became undeniable. Survivors who managed to escape brought with them harrowing tales of massacres and unimaginable cruelty. Satellite imagery confirmed their stories, showing hundreds of villages systematically torched. The attacks by ARSA provided the pretext, but the Tatmadaw's response was a disproportionate act of collective punishment. It was a clear signal that the state no longer saw the Rohingya as part of Myanmar's future. The events of 2017 were not just a crackdown, they were the violent climax of a decades-long project to erase a people from their own country. The violence inflicted upon the Rohingya population during the 2017 crackdown was characterized by its extreme brutality and systematic nature. International human rights organizations, including the United Nations, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, undertook exhaustive investigations to document the crimes. Their reports paint a grim picture of mass killings, where soldiers and allied militias rounded up villagers and executed them. In one infamous massacre in the village of Tulatoli, hundreds of men, women, and children were killed, with many forced into the river to drown or shot as they tried to flee. These were not isolated incidents, but part of a widespread pattern of extrajudicial killings that, according to some estimates, took the lives of at least 6,700 Rohingya in the first month alone. Alongside the mass killings, the destruction of property was deployed as a weapon of expulsion. Satellite imagery provided irrefutable proof of a scorched earth campaign, with over 300 Rohingya villages partially or completely destroyed by fire. Survivors consistently reported that soldiers would enter their villages, loot their homes, and then set them ablaze, often locking people inside to burn. This was not collateral damage from fighting. It was a deliberate strategy to destroy the Rohingyas' homes, livelihoods, and social fabric. By razing their villages, the military aimed to erase any physical evidence of their existence and ensure they had nothing left to return to, effectively turning their homeland into a desolate and unwelcoming landscape. Perhaps the most heinous tool of terror used by the Tatmadaw was systematic sexual violence. Reports from the UN and other human rights groups documented widespread and methodical rape and gang rape of Rohingya women and girls. This was not a random act of rogue soldiers but a coordinated tactic of war, used to humiliate, terrorize, and break the spirit of the community. Women were often abducted from their homes, raped in front of their families, and then either killed or left for dead. The trauma inflicted by these acts is profound and enduring, a deep scar on the collective psyche of the Rohingya people that will take generations to heal, if it ever can. The sheer volume of credible evidence makes it impossible to deny the scale of these atrocities. Thousands of eyewitness testimonies, corroborated by medical evidence, photographic documentation, and advanced satellite analysis, create a comprehensive and damning account of crimes against humanity. The UN fact-finding mission on Myanmar concluded that the country's top military generals must be investigated and prosecuted for genocide, crimes against humanity and crimes. The evidence meticulously collected by these organizations forms the bedrock of legal cases now underway, including the one at the International Court of Justice, seeking to hold the perpetrators accountable for orchestrating one of the 21st century's most horrific campaigns of state violence. The military's campaign of terror triggered one of the fastest and largest forced migrations in recent history. In a matter of weeks, more than 700,000 terrified and traumatized Rohingya fled for their lives, undertaking perilous journeys on foot through jungles and mountains or by rickety boats across the Naf River to reach the safety of neighboring Bangladesh. They arrived exhausted, many with bullet wounds or severe burns, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs, and the haunting memories of the atrocities they had witnessed. This massive influx joined hundreds of thousands of Rohingya who had already fled previous waves of violence, creating an unprecedented humanitarian disaster on Bangladesh's border. The destination for most was Cox's Bazar, a district in southeastern Bangladesh that was quickly transformed into the world's largest refugee settlement. What were once rolling green hills became a sprawling, densely packed megacity of bamboo and tarpaulin shelters. Conditions in the camps are, and have always been, incredibly difficult. Overcrowding is severe, with families crammed into tiny, flimsy huts that offer little protection from monsoon rains and searing heat. Access to clean water, sanitation and healthcare is severely limited, leading to constant risks of disease outbreaks. The sheer density of the population creates immense social and logistical challenges, stretching the resources of the Bangladeshi government and international aid agencies to their absolute limit. For the estimated 600,000 Rohingya who remained in Myanmar, life became a living nightmare under an apartheid-like system. They were confined to their villages or internally displaced persons camps, which have been described as open-air prisons. Their freedom of movement is so severely restricted that they cannot access markets, farms, schools, or hospitals without special permission, which is rarely granted. This segregation has decimated their livelihoods and created a man-made health crisis, with preventable illnesses and malnutrition becoming rampant. They live in a state of constant fear, subject to arbitrary arrest, extortion, and violence at the hands of the same military that perpetrated the 2017 atrocities. As of today, at the close of 2025, the humanitarian scale of this crisis remains staggering. There are now approximately 1,170,000 Rohingya refugees living in the dilapidated camps in Bangladesh. Their situation is worsening, with international funding for aid drastically reduced. Food rations have been cut multiple times, pushing families deeper into poverty and desperation. Life in the camps has become so unbearable that some are considering the unthinkable, returning to the unsafe lands of Myanmar. This desperation highlights the profound failure of the international community to provide more than just basic survival, leaving a generation of Rohingya trapped in a cycle of dependency and hopelessness. Understanding the atrocities committed against the Rohingya requires clarifying two important legal terms: ethnic cleansing and genocide. While they are often used interchangeably, they have distinct meanings. Ethnic cleansing refers to the purposeful policy of forcibly removing an ethnic or religious group from a particular geographic area. This is achieved through various means, including murder, rape, arbitrary arrest and detention, and forced displacement. The goal is to create an ethnically homogeneous region by terrorizing a population into fleeing. The 2017 clearance operations, with their systematic village burnings and the mass exodus of over 700,000 Rohingya, are a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. The UN High Commissioner for Human Rights stated as much, describing it as a textbook example of ethnic cleansing. Genocide, on the other hand, is defined under the 1948 Genocide Convention as specific acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. These acts include killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction, imposing measures to prevent births, and forcibly transferring children. The key element is genocidal intent. Proving this intent is notoriously difficult, but many experts and international bodies argue that the Tatmadao's actions against the Rohingya meet this high legal threshold. The scale of the killings, the systematic use of rape, and the calculated destruction of their way of life all point to an intent to destroy the group. Many legal scholars and human rights investigators argue that the Rohingya have suffered both ethnic cleansing and genocide. The campaign to expel them from Rakhine State was the act of ethnic cleansing, while the methods used to achieve it, mass killings, systematic rape, and the creation of conditions making life impossible, demonstrate a clear genocidal intent to destroy the group itself. The UN's own independent international fact-finding mission concluded there was sufficient evidence to warrant the investigation and prosecution of senior military officials for genocide. They found not only the physical acts of genocide, but also a clear pattern of dehumanizing rhetoric from state officials that framed the Rohingya as a threat to be eliminated. This distinction is not merely academic, it carries significant legal and moral weight. A finding of genocide obligates the international community to act under the Genocide Convention to prevent and punish the perpetrators. This is why the Gambia, on behalf of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, brought a case against Myanmar at the International Court of Justice, accusing it of violating its obligations under the convention. As of late 2025, this case is ongoing. A ruling in favor of the Gambia would be a landmark moment, officially recognizing the suffering of the Rohingya as genocide and creating a powerful mandate for international accountability and justice for the victims. The brutal violence of 2017 was not a sudden eruption, it was the horrifying climax of decades of systematic persecution and institutionalized discrimination. The historical roots of this crisis are, deeply embedded in Myanmar's complex ethnic politics and its struggle with national identity. The Rohingya are a Muslim minority who have lived for centuries in what is now Rakhine State, but their place in the nation has long been contested. Following independence, successive governments promoted a narrow, exclusionary form of Burmese nationalism that viewed the Rohingya as foreign interlopers. This narrative, which falsely casts them as illegal immigrants from Bengal, has been relentlessly pushed by the state to justify their marginalization. A critical turning point was the enactment of the 1982 Citizenship Law. This piece of legislation, effectively rendered the Rohingya stateless overnight. The law established a list of 135 officially recognized national races, and the Rohingya were deliberately excluded. To gain citizenship, they were required to provide conclusive proof that their ancestors had lived in the country before 1823, an impossible standard for a community whose historical records were often informal or had been destroyed. This law was the legal foundation for their persecution, stripping them of their most fundamental right, the right to a nationality, and turning them into foreigners in their own land, vulnerable to every form of abuse. Statelessness became the instrument of their oppression. Without citizenship, the Rohingya were denied basic rights that other citizens of Myanmar took for granted. They faced severe restrictions on their freedom of movement, marriage, education, and access to healthcare. They were subjected to forced labor, arbitrary taxes, and land confiscation. This systemic discrimination was punctuated by periodic waves of state-sponsored violence designed to drive them out. In 1978, a military operation codenamed Dragon King forced over 200,000 Rohingya to flee to Bangladesh, a grim foreshadowing of the events to come. Each wave of violence further entrenched their status as an unwanted and persecuted minority. The state-led campaign of dehumanization was highly effective in poisoning public opinion. For decades, state media, nationalist monks, and politicians have spread hateful propaganda, portraying the Rohingya as a demographic threat to the Buddhist majority and a danger to national security. This constant incitement created a social environment where violence against the Rohingya was not only tolerated but often encouraged. By the time the 2017 crackdown began, much of the general population in Myanmar had been conditioned to see the Rohingya not as fellow human beings but as an alien presence that needed to be removed. This deep-seated racism, institutionalized by law and fueled by propaganda, set the stage for genocide. Just when it seemed the situation for the Rohingya could not get any worse, the military coup of February 2021 plunged Myanmar into a new abyss of chaos and violence. The Tatmadaw seizure of power from the democratically elected government triggered widespread, peaceful protests, which were met with brutal force. This crackdown ignited a nationwide civil war, pitting the military junta against a coalition of pro-democracy People's Defense Forces and long-established ethnic armed organizations. Rakhine State, already a site of immense suffering, once again became a major battleground. The fragile ceasefire between the military and the powerful Arakan army, an ethnic Rakhine armed group, shattered completely. For the Rohingya population still inside Myanmar, the post-coup conflict has been catastrophic. They are trapped in the crossfire between the junta's forces and the Arakan army, with both sides accused of committing grave abuses against them. The military, desperate for manpower and losing ground across the country, has resorted to forcibly conscripting young Rohingya men to fight against the Arakan army. This cruel tactic forces them to serve as human shields and cannon fodder for the very army that tried to exterminate them. Those who refuse face arrest, torture, or execution. This has created an impossible choice: die fighting for your oppressors, or die for refusing. The intensified fighting that began in late 2023 has brought a terrifying sense of déjà vu, with violence and displacement mirroring the horrors of 2017. As the Arakan army has made significant territorial gains, capturing towns like Maungdaw in late 2024, the junta has responded with its signature brutality, indiscriminate airstrikes and artillery shelling of civilian areas. Entire villages have once again been set ablaze, forcing tens of thousands of Rohingya to flee their homes. In the 18 months leading up to mid-2025, this renewed violence has driven an additional 150,000 Rohingya to seek refuge in Bangladesh, the largest influx since the main exodus 8 years ago, while others have risked their lives on treacherous sea journeys to Malaysia and Indonesia. The civil war has completely dismantled any remote prospect of a safe and dignified return for the refugees in Bangladesh. With Rakhine State engulfed in active conflict and the country governed by the same genocidal military, the conditions for repatriation simply do not exist. The international community's focus has been diverted by the broader civil war, leaving the Rohingya more forgotten and vulnerable than ever. The post-coup reality has not just stalled progress, it has actively reversed it, deepening the crisis and multiplying the dangers faced by every Rohingya person, whether they are trapped inside Myanmar or languishing in a refugee camp abroad. As 2025 draws to a close, the Rohingya people remain caught between two distinct but equally desperate realities. For the nearly 1.2 million refugees in Bangladesh, life in the camps has become a struggle for basic survival defined by deprivation and despair. The sprawling settlements in Cox's Bazar are overcrowded and unsanitary, with families living in flimsy shelters that are constantly at risk from fires and landslides during the monsoon season. Hopes for a better future have been eroded by years of stagnation and a growing sense of abandonment. Children born in the camps have never seen their homeland and have limited access to formal education, creating a lost generation with few prospects. The humanitarian situation in the camps has deteriorated sharply due to severe funding shortfalls from the international community. Aid agencies have been forced to make devastating cuts to essential services. Most critically, food aid rations have been repeatedly slashed, falling from a barely adequate $12 per person per month to as low as $6. This has triggered a malnutrition crisis, particularly among children and pregnant women. Families are forced to skip meals and go into debt just to eat. The desperation is so acute that it fuels social problems within the camps, including crime, gender-based violence, and exploitation by criminal gangs who traffic in drugs and people. Meanwhile, for the approximately 600,000 Rohingya who remain inside Myanmar, life is a daily gamble with death. They continue to live under an apartheid system in segregated villages and squalid displacement camps, denied freedom of movement and access to fundamental rights. The escalating civil war has added a new layer of terror to their existence. They are systematically targeted by the military junta for forced recruitment, turning them into pawns in a conflict not of their making. The Arakan army's rise, while challenging the junta, has also brought new fears of persecution, as the Rohingya are caught between two rival armed groups who view them with suspicion. The ongoing violence in Rakhine State makes their lives untenable. Indiscriminate airstrikes and shelling by the junta, as well as clashes on the ground, mean that no place is safe. Their villages are burned, their family members are arrested or killed, and they are constantly forced to flee with no safe destination. They are cut off from humanitarian aid, which the junta deliberately blocks, exacerbating starvation and disease. Whether in the stagnant misery of the camps in Bangladesh or the active war zone of Rakhine State, the Rohingya are trapped in a state of profound trauma, their lives defined by loss, fear, and the relentless struggle to simply endure another day. Finding a durable and just solution to the Rohingya crisis has proven to be an intractable challenge, blocked by a complex web of political, legal, and security obstacles. The most fundamental barrier is the Rohingyas' statelessness. Without recognized citizenship in Myanmar, they have no legal claim to protection, rights, or a place in the country. Any sustainable solution must begin with the restoration of their citizenship and the repeal of discriminatory laws like the 1982 Citizenship Law. However, the military junta and many in Myanmar's political landscape remain staunchly opposed to this, clinging to the racist narrative that the Rohingya are illegal foreigners. Without this foundational step, any talk of return is meaningless. The security situation inside Myanmar presents another insurmountable hurdle: a safe, voluntary, and dignified repatriation, the preferred solution for refugees, host countries, and the international community, is impossible as long as the country is embroiled in a brutal civil war. The same military that orchestrated the 2017 genocide remains in power, and Rakhine State is an active conflict zone. Returning refugees to this environment would be sending them back into the hands of their persecutors and into the crossfire of a raging war. No security guarantees can be trusted from a regime that continues to commit atrocities against its own people on a daily basis across the country. The international political response has been fragmented and largely ineffective. While there has been widespread condemnation of the atrocities, this has not translated into concerted action powerful enough to change the junta's behavior. Geopolitical rivalries have stymied efforts at the UN Security Council, where Myanmar's allies have often shielded it from stronger measures like a global arms embargo or targeted sanctions. The focus of global powers has shifted to other crises, and donor fatigue has set in, leading to the devastating aid cuts that are worsening conditions in the refugee camps. The international community's failure to impose significant costs on the junta has allowed impunity to reign. Finally, the government of Bangladesh, which has shown incredible generosity in hosting over 1 million refugees, is reaching its breaking point. The immense demographic, economic and environmental pressures on the Cox's Bazar region are unsustainable. Bangladesh has repeatedly stated that it cannot host the refugee population indefinitely and has grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress on repatriation. This has led to stricter policies within the camps and growing tensions between the refugee and host communities. The Rohingya are thus caught in a terrible impasse. They cannot go home safely, but their welcome in their place of refuge is wearing thin, leaving them stuck in a stateless limbo with no clear path forward. Beyond the geopolitics, the legal definitions, and the humanitarian statistics lies the profound and enduring human cost of this crisis. For the Rohingya people, the last 8 years have been a continuous saga of loss, trauma, and a desperate struggle for survival. It is a story of families torn apart, with parents who watched their children be killed and children who were orphaned in the most brutal ways imaginable. It is the story of women and girls who carry the physical and psychological scars of sexual violence, and of men who were rounded up and executed while their homes burned behind them. This is not just a political problem, it is a deep, collective wound inflicted upon an entire people. The trauma of the 2017 genocide is relived every day. In the refugee camps, survivors are haunted by memories of the horrors they fled, with little access to the psychosocial support needed to begin healing. They live in a state of suspended animation, stripped of their identity, their land, and their ability to plan for the future. The simple dignity of working, farming their own land, or sending their children to a proper school has been stolen from them. Their lives have been reduced to a daily queue for food rations and a dependence on aid, a reality that chips away at their resilience and sense of self-worth, leaving them feeling forgotten by the world. For those still in Myanmar, the human cost is measured in constant fear and the daily erosion of hope. They live as prisoners in their own homeland, cut off from the world and relentlessly persecuted. The forced conscription of their sons into the military that seeks their destruction is a particularly cruel form of psychological torture, designed to break the community's spirit from within. They face the impossible choice of staying in a land where they're hunted or attempting a perilous escape where they might perish at sea. Their very existence is a testament to human endurance, but it is an existence no one should have to bear. Ultimately, the Rohingya crisis is a story about the devastating consequences of statelessness and the failure of the world to protect the most vulnerable. It is a plea for dignity from a people who have been systematically dehumanized, stripped of their rights, and targeted for destruction. Their struggle is a test of our shared humanity. As we stand at the end of 2025, the international community must move beyond words of condemnation and take meaningful action to ensure justice, restore their citizenship, and create a future where the Rohingya can finally live in safety and with the dignity that has been denied to them for far too long. Their survival depends on it.